It wasn't the sound that announced his arrival. It was the absence of it. The silence that falls when a motorcade of armored black cars glides through the city's east side. The kind of silence that makes streetlights seem dimmer and makes people remember urgent errands elsewhere. Damian Voss. Early 40s. Cold gray eyes. A man whose shadow was heavier than most men's presence. The lead car slowed at an intersection, and the three cars behind it moved like a dark river through concrete. And then a sound that didn't belong in that carefully orchestrated silence. "Sir, please." "Sir, will you buy my bike?" The brake lights flared red. On the cracked sidewalk stood a little girl, no more than 8 years old. Her name was Lena Brookhart, though Voss didn't know that yet. What he saw was painfully thin arms clutching the handlebars of a worn-out pink bicycle, and in one small hand, a piece of cardboard with crayon letters that read, "For sale? Please help." Behind tinted windows, the most feared man in the city went still. The driver's voice crackled through the intercom. "Sir, should we?" "Stop." The door opened. Expensive Italian shoes met broken asphalt. Lena didn't step back. That alone was unusual. Everyone stepped back from Damian Voss. Her voice was soft, but it carried the weight of something far heavier than her small frame should have been able to hold. "My mommy. She's getting worse. We need medicine. And food. This is all I have left to sell." Behind her, barely visible in the doorway of a condemned building, was a figure wrapped in a thin blanket. Claire Brookhart, mid-30s but looking older, pale from hunger, watching her daughter with eyes that held both pride and desperation. Voss's jaw tightened. In Lena's face, he saw something that shouldn't exist in a child's eyes. Exhaustion. The kind he remembered from his own childhood mirror. They called him ruthless, precise. A man who built an empire on control and fear. What they didn't know, what no one knew, was that Damian Voss had once been a hungry child too. That he remembered the weight of a stomach that had been empty for days. That he remembered watching his own mother fade the same way Claire Brookhart was fading now. He knelt down, slowly, and for the first time in 15 years, Damian Voss allowed someone to see him at eye level. "Tell me everything," he said quietly. "Start from the beginning." Stories like this one, where a desperate plea meets unexpected mercy, remind us why we can never stop believing in second chances. If this story moved you, if you want to see what happens when power meets purpose, please like, subscribe, and share with someone who needs to hear this today. Your support doesn't just help our channel grow, it helps us share stories that prove compassion and justice can still change everything. Join our community. Be part of the story. And Lena did. Between small breaths and brave attempts not to cry, she told him about her mother's old job, about the man her mother had worked for, a man named Marcus Thorne, about how her mother had discovered something wrong in the numbers, about how one day men came and took their home, their car, everything. "Mommy said she tried to do the right thing," Lena whispered. "But the right thing made us lose everything." Voss's hand, resting on his knee, slowly curled into a fist. The name Marcus Thorne hung in the air like smoke. Voss knew that name. A real estate mogul. A money launderer for the Volkov family, his rivals. A man who used corruption instead of courage. Who ruined lives with paperwork instead of bullets. And now, a man who had made the mistake of starving a child. Voss reached into his coat. Lena flinched slightly, not from fear, but from the instinct of someone who had learned to expect disappointment. He pulled out a folded stack of bills and placed them in her hand. Far more than any bicycle was worth. Far more than medicine would cost. "Keep your bike," he said, his voice rough with something that might have been emotion. "And tell your mother someone's going to make this right." He stood, returning to his full height, and the cold mask slipped back into place. But as he walked back to his car, his hand was shaking. Behind him, Lena clutched the money and whispered, "Thank you." Voss didn't turn around. He couldn't. Because if he did, she would see that the most dangerous man in the city had tears in his eyes. What Lena Brookhart didn't know, what Marcus Thorne would soon discover, was that she hadn't just met a stranger with money. She had awakened something far more dangerous. A man with power, a memory, and a reason. The motorcade didn't stop at the penthouse. It rolled through 2 more districts before Voss finally spoke. "Marco, His consigliere leaned forward from the seat behind him, reading the shift in his boss's voice, the way a seismologist reads tremors before an earthquake. I want everything. The girl. The mother. Their history. Who they are, where they've been, and who put them on that street corner. Voss's fingers drummed once against his knee, a gesture Marco had seen only twice before. Both times before someone died. I want it by morning. Marco didn't ask why. Men in their world didn't survive by asking why. By dawn, a file sat on Voss's desk. Claire Brookhart, former senior bookkeeper at Thorne Capital Management. Exemplary record. Single mother. And then, 3 months ago, terminated without cause. Blacklisted. Evicted. Bank accounts frozen by irregularities that were never proven, never explained. The name at the bottom of every document was the same. Marcus Thorne. Voss read it twice. Then he stood at his window, watching the sunrise paint the city gold, and remembered what hunger felt like, what powerlessness tasted like. Marcus Thorne had made a miscalculation. He'd assumed destroying Claire Brookhart would go unnoticed. He'd forgotten that some ghosts never stop watching. Marcus Thorne's empire began to crumble on a Tuesday. The first domino was a leaked audit, pristine, damning, delivered anonymously to 3 federal agencies and 4 major financial news outlets simultaneously. By noon, Thorne's primary holding company had lost 40% of its value. By close of market, his board was in revolt. Voss watched from his penthouse. Gray eyes, tracking the ticker with the same cold precision he'd used to watch a rival bleed out. But there was no blood here. Only numbers. Only ruin. Phase 2, he said quietly into his phone. Within 72 hours, Thorne's banking connections severed. His political allies vanished. His laundered accounts froze under sudden IRS scrutiny. Scrutiny that Voss's network had been feeding for weeks with surgical precision. The meeting came on day 6. An empty office building. No names, no witnesses. Thorne arrived desperate, searching for mercy from whoever was destroying him. Instead, he found Voss, seated in shadow, a single folder on the table between them. Claire Brookhart, Voss said. Her daughter, Lena. You remember them? Thorne's face drained. You tried to starve a child. Voss slid the folder forward. Arrest warrants. Seized assets, decades of prison time. Now, watch your legacy starve. 2 days later, federal agents took Thorne in handcuffs. The news called it justice. Voss called it closed. The envelope arrived on a Tuesday morning, unmarked, slipped beneath Claire Brookhart's door while the city still slept. Inside, a deed to a modest 2-bedroom home in a quiet neighborhood where children played without fear, and a bank statement showing a balance that made her hand shake so violently she nearly dropped it. The attached letter was typed, anonymous, clinical, employment offer enclosed, accounting position, legitimate firm, references verified, start Monday. No signature, no return address, just 3 words handwritten at the bottom. You are safe. Claire wept, not understanding, only grateful. 3 weeks later, Damian Voss sat in the back of his sedan, parked 2 blocks from a small playground. Through the tinted window, he watched Lena ride a new bicycle, bright red this time, with streamers that actually shimmered in the sunlight. Her laughter carried on the wind, a sound so pure it felt foreign to him. The worn-out pink bicycle sat in his private office now, a relic he couldn't explain to anyone. A reminder. Marco cleared his throat from the front seat. Sir? The next meeting. 1 more minute, Voss said quietly. Lena circled the playground again. Fearless. Whole. Her mother sat on a bench nearby. Color returned to her cheeks. Reading a book in the afternoon light. Voss felt something unfamiliar settle in his chest. Not warmth. Not quite. But absence. The absence of the cold that had consumed him for decades. The boy he'd buried long ago stirred one final time. Not in pain, but in recognition. He'd saved nothing. He'd saved everything. The motorcade pulled away in silence, leaving behind no trace, no gratitude, no witness. Just a child's laughter and a mother's tears of relief, proof that even in the darkest corners of power, a single moment of humanity could still reshape a life. Damian Voss would never speak of it. would never claim it. But every time he passed that pink bicycle in his office, he allowed himself the smallest concession, a breath that came easier, a sleep that, for once, was undisturbed. He remained what he'd always been: ruthless, precise, feared. But now, he was also something else. A guardian. Unseen. Unacknowledged. And finally, at peace. Let's make compassion and kindness go viral. Like, share, and subscribe if you believe kindness still matters now more than ever.